In the United States, men make up 5.8% of all registered nurses. The implications of this statistic highlight the fact that the nursing profession is predominantly made up of women. It is important to note this as we evaluate the depiction of nursing in the media and basically how the profession is represented using gender biases and stereotyping. Before we begin looking at how the media represents nurses, let's start from the beginning to gain a quick perspective on the history of nursing. The fact is that nursing has been around since the early ages. Though it was not considered a profession at the time, women practiced nurturing and healing members of their family. Nuns and other clergy members were also known for taking care of the sick and dying. Some women really enjoyed this role as a caregiver and decided to take their services outside of their own family as it began to branch out and care for others in need. One woman in particular took this self-sacrificing role and turned it into a respected, paid profession. Florence Nightingale was her name, and she had such a heavy influence on how nurses, even today, work. She developed and refined nursing skills and competencies. She set the stage for what was to be a thriving profession. Other developments included the nurse's role in battle. The hundreds of thousands of casualties and injuries during the Civil War required help from the women. Untrained nurses would form groups and go out and care for the wounded and dying soldiers. Clara Barton, in particular, was a civilian who was awed by the lack of help and care for the soldiers. She was responsible for many advancements in the health care at this time and went on to establish the American Red Cross. Clara Barton was also known as the Angel of the Battlefield. Now this is interesting as you pay attention to the juxtaposition in the title. A battlefield is tough, manly, and rugged. Contrastingly, Angel holds an angelic, delicate, and quite frankly, feminine connotation. Even though the skills that Miss Barton was practicing couldn't have been further from delicate. As the nursing profession began to expand and develop in the late 19th and 20th century, the prevailing theme of the male doctors and female nurses was widespread. Traditionally in the healthcare environment, men were doctors who called the shots, and women were their nurses, or in other words, their helpers or their aides. This in itself still placed the woman back into a submissive role. She didn't hold much authority or decision-making abilities when it came down to the terms of patient care and treatment. While masculinity is associated with power, femininity is associated with caring and nurturing. Now let's take a look at how nurses used to be depicted. Many attributes that were associated with nursing and the nursing profession were not very authoritative. They were thought that nurses were to be subordinate, domestic, humble, and self-sacrificing, and nurturing at the most. And they were indeed more emotional than men, and less aggressive. The misrepresentation that the media puts out about nurses really affects the interdisciplinary teamwork. The poor image undermines the professionalism of the nursing profession. It creates a lack of trust and lack of respect within the interdisciplinary team between nurses and physicians. When researching different advertisements for nurses and healthcare teams, I came across a common theme. A lot of the pictures showed doctors in the front of the picture and the nurses or women in the back. The male doctors were the focal point, holding the most authority. The women were standing out back, sometimes blurred, not as important in terms of the picture. When researching other types of photos for advertisements of healthcare teams and workers, I did find another theme, that it was very common to see a male doctor with a facial expression as very powerful and stout. Now, when I looked at other photos of nurses, it represented them as being very smiley and bubbly and caring, someone very approachable, someone with less power and more on your level. When we are younger, we begin to become exposed to different gender roles. We see men doing certain jobs and we see women doing certain jobs. So I took it upon myself to ask a 10-year-old if given the chance, would he choose to be a doctor or a nurse? He responded doctor because girls are only nurses and it would be too girly for him to be a nurse, and he wouldn't want to wear the girly uniform. Now, this didn't surprise me very much, but I did find it interesting because I wonder if he had ever been exposed to a male nurse, if maybe his thoughts on this would have changed. Now, the depiction of male nurses in the media is much, much different and holds its own problems. The depiction is typically a male nurse is usually represented by an overly sensitive male, a homosexual male, or a male who is striving to become a doctor but is settling for nursing on his way. These are some examples.
Sorry, can't remember if I mocked you yet for being a male nurse. I think this counts. Fair enough.
Lucky to have her. What can I say? I like a challenge. First of all, female football coach like a male nurse. Sin against nature.
Not only does the nursing image affect public opinion, but it also affects a nurse's opinion of his or herself. It affects the self-image, the self-esteem, and even work performance. Overall, I hope I was able to give you a good sense of how the media really represents nurses, how it shapes public opinion, and how it affects work in disciplinary teams, and the nurse's self-image. The nursing image that is being portrayed to the public has not been very accurate. It has been stereotypical and gender biased in terms of female and male nursing. I also believe that we have come a long way over the years to establish a more accurate view.